You know, Mother's Day can be quite complicated and downright messy. At our deacons' meeting this morning, Lamont shared our devotions and gave a beautiful tribute to the impact of a godly mother on her family and on the people around her. And for many, that's what Mother's Day is all about. For others, it's one of the most difficult days of the year. For instance, there are women who wanted to be mothers and who live in the pain of unfulfilled longings and dreams. There are women who are at peace with not being a mother, but who are often made to feel less than because of that fact, especially on Mother's Day. There are mothers who will not hear from their children today. There are mothers who have buried children. There are mothers who have experienced excruciating pain in other forms. And there are children, young and old, whose experience of having a mother was less than what their heart longed for. Some a little less, others absolutely, unbelievably less. I've enjoyed the writings of Christian author Anne Voskamp since I was first introduced to her best-selling book, 1,000 Gifts. If you haven't read that, I strongly recommend it. I've not read any of her other books. I've read many of her blogs, and it seemed like my Facebook feed was blown up this week by one post after another, or repost of some of her writings as Mother's Day approached. One of her articles, and this is just a few paragraphs from it, kind of spoke to the breadth of the experiences on this day that I've just called messy, Mother's Day. As she tries to encompass a lot of different feelings and experiences, she starts by saying, it takes more than a village to raise a child. It takes a tribe of mothers. Biology makes you a mother, and bond makes you a mother. Holding space within yourself or holding space for someone else makes you a mother. And the woman who grew your body may not be the woman who grows your soul. The woman to whom you were tethered to with an umbilical cord may not be the only one who's tied to your heart. Because to grow a soul, it will take a body of women, birth mothers and soul mothers and spiritual mothers and sister mothers. And there is no class system of mothers. There is only passing on grace. She continues, I've known women who birthed and loved babies they didn't raise, and women who loved and raised babies they didn't birth. I've known women who feel like they've deeply failed the babies they love, and I've known babies who feel like their mom has deeply failed everyone they love. So you see, Mother's Day is a little bit messy. But I'm praying for an infusion of Miraculous today. I have handwritten into my notes because it just occurred to me as I was sitting here and praise team was gathering, and I'm reflecting on this and feeling like, this just really hasn't all come together, and God, you've got to make something of this, because I've got a lot of stuff printed out and written down. And I thought, well, yeah, messy, in need of some miracle. Okay, it's not only Mother's Day, it's this sermon today, okay? And it feels that way. And part of what's been on my heart is not only to talk about motherhood, but to recognize that as we do that this morning, we're also talking about life. We're talking about church even sometimes. That life is messy. It's not all, we can't control it. It's not all just programmed, and it doesn't all turn out the way we want and the way that we plan, and it's messy. And yet in the midst of it, there is miracle. There is God. For a few moments this morning, I want to talk to the mothers who are present. If you're not a mother, but you had a mother, thanks for getting that, you can listen too. Just know that I'm not actually talking to you, well, maybe not directly. To the mothers here this morning, regardless of how long you've been a mother, has motherhood been everything you expected? I'm not asking for an answer out loud. My guess is that for most of you, if not all, being a mother has been much harder and far more challenging than you ever imagined before you started. My guess is that for most of you, there have also been far more disappointments, more doubts, more failures, more heartache, and more tears than you ever imagined before you started. At least at some points in the journey, it has felt more like madness than method, more like chaos than control. In short, being a mother is a messy business. I don't just mean diapers and laundry and crayons on the wall. I mean the fact that the child who steps on your toes begins to grow and eventually, inevitably, though not necessarily even intentionally, ends up stepping on your heart. I mean the fact that you can have it all planned and programmed, but life throws you a curve. Things don't turn out as planned. Kids don't turn out as planned. You don't turn out as planned. It's complicated. It's messy. And yet, my guess is that for most of you, there have been joys beyond what you ever imagined. In the midst of the mess, there has been something miraculous. In you, through you, that's motherhood. That's life. It's actually how both motherhood and life get their start. Remember childbirth? It's actually quite messy, literally, and terrifying, and painful, and hard, and beautiful. And miraculous. Told you this might be a little messy this morning. It might be a little rambling. Though, unusually, it's pretty much all down here in front of me. I wonder this morning, again to you moms, if you had to give yourself a letter grade as a mother, I wonder what it would be. Now just bear with me this morning. This is not a test. An honest grade representing how you feel you measure up or measured up. Not to other people, not even to your children, but even just to the standard that you have for yourself. I think we would all be surprised by how many C's, D's, and even F's might be written down on a slip of paper anonymously. If you're being honest about how you feel. I said, I think we'd all be surprised. Those of us who are not mothers would probably be surprised. Those of you who are mothers would be surprised. You say, well, how would you be surprised if most mothers are writing down the same thing? Well, I think those are not mutually exclusive. I think most mothers would be surprised to find that most mothers would put themselves in one of those categories because most mothers feel like everyone else has it all together, and you're the only one who doesn't. I want you to think back to the scripture that Lois read before the offering. Strange scripture to have in that spot. Remember what it was? Exodus 20? The what? The 10 Commandments, except not all 10, no. She cut you a break this morning because that's what I asked her to read. She only read the first 5. So how did that make you feel hearing those? Does it make you feel inspired? Does it make you feel better about yourselves? Now, maybe you might say, hey, like a young man that Mike Koval dramatized for us several weeks ago. I've kept all those since I was a child. And we only read the first 5. We didn't even get to murder and adultery and covetousness and bearing false witness and there's another one in there. Anyhow. We didn't even, I took them out of order and then I got messed up. We didn't even get to all of them, and yet we can very quickly, you see how, you know, we're not just talking about mothers here, we're talking about everybody, how quickly we can go from feeling nice and happy in church to feeling like a failure. And if that wasn't enough, then we sang a song that painted a picture. At least for the first 3 verses, pretty much a perfect picture of homes and families built firm upon the Savior, where Christ is head and counselor and guide, where every child is taught his love and favor and gives his heart to Christ the crucified. Homes where with godly fathers, mothers who always place their hope and trust in him, whose tender patience turmoil never bothers, whose calm and courage trouble cannot dim. Give us homes where Christ is Lord and Master, the Bible read, the precious hymns still sung, where prayer comes first in peace or in disaster, and praise is natural speech to every tongue. Did I just describe your home? I'm not raising my hand because it's mine. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of great Christian ideals in that song, and I'm for all of them. I just wonder if that song inspires you or leaves you feeling a little bit defeated. Say, wow, this is a little messy. I would suspect that at least for some of you, if you didn't simply tune it out, you listened to a church full of people singing that hymn or others like it, and you assume that everyone else is living that hymn, and you know that you don't even come close. And you feel like a failure, and you feel very much alone. You're not. For others of you, perhaps you've tried your absolute best to live up to those ideals. You did everything by the book, and things still haven't worked out. Your young children are struggling. Your adult children are wandering. You feel like God has abandoned you, and you feel very alone. There are a few things I want you to know this morning. And one thing in particular I would like to give you this morning for Mother's Day. What I want you to know, I've already said it, but you are not alone. You're not alone here. You're not the only one who may feel like you don't measure up. You're not alone because God has not abandoned you. You're not alone because we can go back as early as Genesis and find the mother of all humanity. That's what her name means, the one who gives life. Her husband gave her that name because she would be the mother of all the living. Her experience of motherhood was about as messy as it gets. 2 sons, things seem fine. The sons grow up. You know what happened. One kills the other. And where does that leave you as a mom? You ever think about that for Eve? In the middle of the mess, there is miracle, and God gives another son. His name means gift. His name is Seth. And from his line, God set about a plan to bring redemption to the whole human race. You're not alone. Messiness, heartache has been part of the human experience ever since the beginning. And yet God still shows up in the midst of the mess and does amazing things. What I want you to know, you are not alone. What I want you to know, I've already said it, being a mother is messy. What I want you to know, being a mother is also miraculous. It's not just that in the midst of the mess, however, God shows up. It's not just that in the midst of our mess, we need God to show up, even in the midst of our best. And I think this is important to understand. Even in the midst of our very best, we still need God to show up. Because we were not designed to do this by ourselves. John 15. Jesus talks about the vine and the branches. He says of himself, I am the vine. He says of us, you are the branches. Abide in me and I in you, and you will bear fruit. Apart from me, you can't do anything. And that's not meant to put us down. That's meant to invite us in. It's meant to recognize our dependence upon God in all of life. That whether it's in the middle of our mess or whether it's at our very best, we still need God to show up. We still need the miracle. We still need God's presence in it all. We still need God to do what we can never make happen. To bring good, to bring fruit out of our lives. There's a cartoon I was handed recently. I told you this was messy. Cartoon was really the inspiration for this whole message this morning. Thank you, Brother Ray. It's a cartoon that was given to me really in light of our consultation process, and Ray spent the majority of his adult career as a consultant. He understands these processes, and he thought I might appreciate this cartoon. I thought I would put it on, scan it and show it on the screen, and I'm just going to tell you about it. It certainly relates to a lot of processes, a lot of planning. It actually has to do with, I don't know how to describe this, production control systems. Okay, if you've worked in business or whatever, you might understand that. But here's the picture. There's this big chart on the wall. So imagine this big chart behind me, and there are these two ants. They're the characters in this cartoon. And one of them apparently is the supervisor, and another one is the young apprentice or the junior member or whoever he might be. And so apparently the younger ant, appropriately named Antworth, has produced this incredible chart, this diagram, this design of their production control system, okay? This is basically how we're going to get the outcome that we desire. And on the left 3/4 of this whole chart is just one line, and all over the place is lines, and there's probably a certain name for this, but I mean, it's just, I'm not kidding, all over the place, all these ways that these two connect and then lead to this and this and this, and it's just all this different chart. And then they all kind of come to one point where there's a single arrow moving further toward the desired outcome. So you've got all of these things, and as if this junior member is saying, if we can make all of these things happen, then we get to this arrow, and then we only need one more thing to get the desired outcome. And there's this single box here that all of this has to flow through in order to get the desired outcome. You know what that box says? Then a miracle occurs. Should that discourage us? Oh, actually, that's not all there is to the cartoon. Actually, the supervisor, the senior member, has this like pointer stick, and he's pointing to that spot on this chart where it says, then a miracle occurs. And he says, good work, Antworth, but I think we might need just a little more detail right here. That's life. I think it speaks of motherhood as a part of life. I think we do our best to plan, to figure things out. I think a church does its best in consultation to try to plan and to strategize and to say, we think this is what God's calling us to do, and this next phase to develop this priority-based action plan. I think that's exactly what we need to be doing. But we dare not, in the midst of all of our planning, in the midst of doing the best we can, we dare not take it all on ourselves to the exclusion of recognizing that no matter what it is, we are still dependent upon God. Unless the Lord builds the house, the workers labor but in vain. We need to remember that. We need to remember that we're not alone. We need to remember that everything we do, we're still dependent upon the presence of God to bless, to work through our efforts, and to bring good out of our mess, to bring good out of our best, because apart from Him, we won't accomplish anything of lasting value. I told you what I want you to know. I haven't told you yet what I'd like to give you. What I would like to give you moms especially on this Mother's Day. What I'd like to give to all of you as we struggle through this mess called life is grace. It's grace. Read another article, blog article by Ann Voskamp. She suggests that moms, that's really what you want more than anything on Mother's Day. She writes, yeah, if you're being gut honest here, you don't really want the cards or the flowers or what gets wrapped up in shiny paper or stuffed in a bag with wrinkled tissue paper or anything that gets tied up and presented with those dangling tendrils and curling ribbon. What you really wanted is to be extraordinarily obviously good at this mothering thing. You wanted to be the best at this. You wanted to take the podium and gold medal in mothering. You didn't want to take a million timeouts behind some locked bathroom door, turn on the water so no one hears you sobbing at what a mess this whole shebang is and how you'd like to just run away. Ask me how I know. She's speaking from her own experience. Honest, she says, you wanted to be more. You wanted to be more patient. You wanted never to lose it, to always have it together, to keep calm, and that is all, always. And yeah, to take their tantrums with a grain of salt instead of throwing one of yours that turned out to be a first-class tsunami, a tad bit more dramatic even than theirs. You wanted more flashes of wisdom in the heat of the moment when you had no bloody idea what the best thing to do was. When you flung up an SOS prayer, made the call on the deal that the kid was facing, and you and the kid hated you for it, you crawled into bed feeling like a heel who always gets it wrong when everyone else gets it right. You'd give your eye teeth and your left arm for more time to get it right, to get more right and less wrong. You'd want a do-over. You'd want to be better. And she says, what you really want, desperately, wildly, in spite of everything, is for them to remember the good. To remember enough of the times you whispered, I love you. For them to know how many times you broke your heart and how hard you really tried. All you want is for them to feel a deep sense of safety, that they are safe to trust people, safe to dream large, safe to believe, safe to try, safe to love large and go fly. And you need to know that you haven't wrecked that they feel the certain tender embrace of your love, in spite of all the storming times you acted unlovely. So could someone just wrap up a bit of grace? What every mother wants, her most unspoken need, is a truckload of grace. And that's my heart for you today. If there's any way you can feel that, if there's any way I can be a channel for you to receive that this morning, let God wash you with a truckload of grace.